Everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, the AI-fication of jobs, preparing ourselves for the future of work and talent, hosted by ourselves, eFinancialCareers and CFTE. I'm delighted to be joined today by Huy NGUYEN TRIEU, the co-founder of CFTE and the author of the AI-fication of jobs, easy for me to say. Welcome, Huy.
Thanks a lot. Hi, Pete. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you on eFinancialCareers. I used to be in banking before, so I'm, of course, very well acquainted with eFinancialCareers and the global reach that you have.
That's great. Well, I'm really looking forward to this one. So as a leader of a business that operates in this space, as the leader of people, as a professional myself, thinking about, what is going to be the impact for me, the business, my teams, also thinking about my kids as well, actually. So I'm really interested to get in to the topic today. I'll let you introduce yourself in a moment, Huy, because I can't do it justice. My name's Peter Healey. I'm the CEO of eFinancialCareers. We're a global career platform for the banking and financial services sector, operating the key kind of global financial centres. We're really interested today in bringing this topic up. We know it's a topic that's hot it's a hot subject in boardrooms, certainly within talent departments. We know that by banking, financial services, we see there is a lot of disruption, modernization, and there's a significant evolution happening. And we want to help those of you responsible for people, those of you who are trying to manage your own career, just get some better insight from someone who's written a book about this topic. So really great to have everybody here. Just in terms of, we've had some questions come through from the audience, so we'll cover as many of those as we can through the course of the webinar. If you do ask a question and we don't get to it, my apologies, but we will respond to every question directly, so you will get a kind of direct response to any questions that don't get answered. So I guess let's get into a bit of an intro, Huy. Do you want to just kind of, I guess, introduce yourself and tell us what kind of inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Pete. So in terms of my background, co-founder of CFTE, Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship, a global education platform in finance and technology. Before CFTE, I used to be in banking. So I used to run insurance and pension structuring at Citi. Before that, head of macro structuring at UBS. So my world, used to be fixed income, for those of you who are listening and, who are part of the fixed income world. That was my day job. I also had a night job, and my night job was in fintech. So founding partner of Supercharger, that was the largest fintech accelerator in Asia out of Hong Kong. Some companies like Crypto.com, for example, went through Supercharger. And also teaching, first a fintech resident expert at Oxford, where I co-created the Oxford FinTech course, the first online course of Oxford, a while ago, which was about how do we get people in financial services to learn about fintech, which was really good. But of course, not everybody can afford Oxford. And that's why we launched CFTE with the objective of education at scale, making sure that everybody in the industry could have very good knowledge about what's important today, which is understanding technology and applying it to their job, whatever job that they do. CFTE now has grown into an organization which is global. We have offices here in London, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Hong Kong, a few other places. More than 200,000 professionals take our courses. And what about the book? Because you asked a question about the book and why I wrote the book. So since 2018, I was program director of the first certification of AI in finance. So at that time already, we thought that AI would be really, really important. And so we know that space quite well. However, as we all know, ChatGPT in November 2022 changed a lot of things. And what we saw is that it hugely accelerated pretty much everything, including jobs and how jobs were adapting. And very quickly, we realized that us, the industry, nobody had a really good idea of what was the impact of AI on jobs. There are very big numbers out there, 300 million jobs impacted, half positively, negatively, but how will AI really transform jobs? And here I took my hat as a microstructure or someone who loves models, and I went much, much deeper, trying to have a really good confidence in understanding how AI will transform jobs. And this is what I did for pretty much a year before releasing the AI-fication of jobs.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, anyone who wants to go and look at Huy's background through his LinkedIn profile, yeah, you'll see it's a pretty storied background. I think you only reference your MD positions in banking. That's how experienced you are in our industry. So great to have you. Let's start from the top then, and kind of thinking about the job market itself. But if we start kind of with the disruption itself, how do you see AI disrupting kind of banking and financial services more broadly before we get into jobs?
Yes, definitely. So I think when we think of the impact of AI on any kind of industries, it's quite clear that it will have an impact. What is unclear is what kind of impact. So I took the angle of starting on the job side, because this will have the biggest leverage. If we think in terms of that impact, if we had to summarize, there will be some replacement, some enhancing, some things that will be totally different. But at the level of the industry, what does it mean? It means a few different things. It means that first, the impact of AI will be different by types of organization. If we think of a bank like Citi, for example, or a startup fintech company like Revolut or an early stage startup, it will be really different. The impact of this at the industry level, I think, is twofold. The first one is that let's call that established fintech startups, those that already have clients, licenses. So I'm thinking of Revolut or Nubank or Klarna or WeBank, for example. Those companies will accelerate a lot. They will accelerate a lot because they already have their licenses. They already have a customer base. They also have the technology infrastructure for them to leverage AI, and they have the mindset of a tech company. So those companies, in my opinion, will continue to scale a lot. On the banking side, financial institutions, here I think we will see a big divergence between different types of organizations. Some organizations, like JP Morgan, for example, that have a very strong data and AI infrastructure will leverage it a lot and will basically accelerate. There are a lot of other banks, on the other hand, which are still very far behind in terms of they haven't even gone through their digital transformation. And so in terms of data, they don't have data the data in the systems that allows them to scale. And so they don't have the infrastructure to be able to properly leverage AI. It's very siloed. They will struggle. So even in banking, I think that we will see some organizations doing really, really well, while some others are just trying to keep up with that technology background. So I think that's one impact at the industry level. At the operating system, so in terms of operating model, I think that for those that have the capabilities to leverage AI, anything that can be automated will be automated. So we will see much more of that, which means also that for a lot of the people, they will be able to do higher value types of contributions. And for the rest, they will continue to be very, very manual. So I don't think that we can say there's one impact of AI that will really depend on the types of organizations and how AI ready they are or not. And that's really their internal infrastructure, operating model, processes, AI strategy, for example.
Awesome. So will AI take our jobs? Like, are there going to be jobs created like in previous technological revolutions? Is it different this time? Like, what's your take?
Yeah, so I addressed that specifically in the book because that's always I think if we are having a nice coffee and talked about it, we'd see that people have very, very different views on that, and some would say we've seen it before with the electricity, the internet, every time we've had some jobs that would disappear, but overall, society would be better off because we would see more growth and more jobs being created. And this time is different. That's the other camp of people who would say, AI is not the same. We cannot compare AI to the internet, and we're likely to see a lot of job losses. The conclusion of this, and I'm very confident about the conclusion, is that first, this time is different in the sense of it's really different. Let me take an example. With the beginning of the internet, let's say that you were working in the newspaper. The newspaper was challenged because of the internet and social media. Your newspaper basically was challenged, and you would lose your job. You'd lose your job, but you still have your skills, and with your skills, you can go into another job, into another newspaper, or working in the internet or social media or press and communication. So that was totally possible. You lose your job, but that's a collateral impact of the internet. For AI today, it's different. If I am a translator, and if my company decides to use AI instead of me as a translator, it's a direct impact. Because if I go somewhere else and look for another job as a translator, I'm still competing with AI, which is still trying to do the same job as me, but not cheaper, better, faster. So this time it's different. Does it mean that it will be universally negative? No, it doesn't say that. It just says that this time is different because it's at the level of our skills. So what's the impact? And again, I have high confidence on that because I use some innovation frameworks I've been using for a long time for companies like Revolut or Bitcoin. We have 3 impacts that will happen. The first one is what I call the supercharged professionals. We will see the rise of a new class of people who will be doing extremely well, basically who could do 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times better, more than what they used to do by leveraging AI. So supercharged professional is one big trend, which we are starting to see now already, a lot in the startup world. The second one is mass displacement. So a lot of people will struggle to keep up with AI because now AI, the reality is that AI is better than the average of us. And on average, we're all average. So mass displacement, where employers will decide to use AI instead of us, this is happening also now. And the third one, which will be perhaps more rare, but at the same time, much bigger impact, is the creative disruptors. Those few people who change the world. Sam Altman, definitely, changes the world. Demis Hassabis, for example. Demis Hassabis, CEO of Google DeepMind, revolutionized chemistry and biology, got a Nobel Prize for this. I just saw that, for example, with the work that they did at Google DeepMind, they did the equivalent, I think, of 2 billion years of PhD work for protein folding. That's just incredible. So those 3 impacts are coming. So I would say, at an individual level or industry level, some people will do really, really, really well. There will be mass displacement. That's a fact. But also some people will totally transform their industries. And in finance, I'm pretty sure that some will definitely do that.
So who's getting displaced, do you think? And that, which jobs do you think will disappear? Which ones might be created?
So I think there's the obvious answer and the not obvious no answer. There's the obvious answer if we think in terms of, let's call that what a framework of a consulting company would do, which is if I take the jobs which are highly repeatable, which have let's say low impact, then in that case they will be replaced. Whereas the jobs which are less frequent, high impact, will be less replaced. So that's one way of looking at it, and it might be true from a macro standpoint. But I think that for me, as a person or as an industry, it doesn't tell the whole story. And the whole story is that I don't think we can look by job functions. For example, customer service. We know in banking that customer service agents, in the example of Klarna, is I think they are really transparent about it. Is that Klarna, 1,000 customer service agents, 700 customer service agents, let's call that replaced by OpenAI and a chatbot, but still 200, 300 customer service agents who do something different, who have been enhanced by AI. So for same job, customer service agents, some were replaced and some were enhanced. So I think the interesting question is why? Now, what's the difference between someone who's basically losing her job to an AI and someone who basically gets more responsibility? And that's, I think, a totally different way of asking the question and looking at it. And for us at CFT, this is what we call the capabilities framework, and thinking not in terms of jobs or skills, but really in terms of capabilities and what kind of capabilities will allow you to do really well and what kind of capabilities will make your job more challenging.
And so do you think, what would you say are the kind of the skills and capabilities that are going to become more important and professionals should be kind of thinking about, and teams, employers should be thinking about, okay, this needs to be a focus?
Yeah, so in terms of capabilities, we have a capabilities framework, which is called the performance hexagon. It took us a long time to properly think about it, because you're right that we tend to think more in terms of skills initially, hard skills, Python, data, soft skills, etc. But it's not sufficient. We know that knowing Python is better than not knowing Python, and being a good communicator is better than not being a good communicator. But we can't be everything at the same time. Okay. So how can I have a good idea of what kind of capabilities I need? And so the performance hexagon has 5 different categories of people based on their capabilities and their contribution to the organization. Those 5 levels are underperforming contributor. The underperforming contributors are people where, when given a task, they would, for example, do it too slowly, or they would make mistakes, or they need a lot of iterations. So this is what we would call high performance. The second category would be the task robots. The task robots, when given a task, when we tell them what to do, when to do, how to do it, they would do it well. They are good executors. Another category would be the problem solver. They don't need to be given a task. When they are given a problem, they find a way to solve that problem. So they get things done. The next level would be the system thinkers. The system thinkers, when they're given a problem, not only do they find a way to solve that problem, but they find a way to solve all similar types of problems by putting in place a framework or systems or processes. They basically scale the business. And finally, the superstars are those people who, they don't need to be given a problem. They will identify the problem, they will identify the opportunities and create a business out of this. They are business builders. So those 5 categories, and perhaps for the audience, they can try to think of where they are. First, those 5 categories, they are not a reflection of who you are, because those 5 categories, they really depend on the context. For example, in an organization, I could be a very good problem solver. In another organization, I could be an underperformer, for example. So they really depend on the context. And depending on the organization, some organizations actually want to have superstars, some want to have task robots. For example, in banking, where I used to be, you don't want just to have superstars. Actually, you want a lot of task robots. You want people who can execute really well and safely and efficiently. In a startup, it doesn't work, because in a startup, I don't know what the tasks are, so I can't have task robots. So I need people, problem solvers and system thinker or superstar. So it's very, very context dependent. But going back to the question about the impact of AI on this gives you a very good perspective on what is the impact of AI. Because at the level of underperforming or task robots, it's more likely to be replaced by AI. Because even if I'm a very, very good task robot, this is where AI is really good, which is those tasks which are repetitive and that happen on a very, very frequent basis. So it's more likely to be replacement, whereas problem solver or system thinker, it's much more likely to be enhanced. This is where I'm being supercharged and leveraged. So it's more than just soft skills, hard skills, or whatever kind of skills. I think it's really capabilities and what kind of contribution that you can bring to the organization.
And what would you say? Could you pick out some jobs or roles that you think, okay, these are the most interesting jobs in banking today, kind of, or they're likely to have a really bright future in as we go through this transformation?
So I would say all jobs. All jobs. I don't have a view at all on jobs because it's not a question. No, again, it's really a question which is much more individual and of capabilities rather than in terms of job or job sector. I could take almost any kind of job functions, from research to sales to trading to relationship manager to analyst, etc., etc. All of those, we know for a fact that they will be transformed by AI. It's a fact. No, each single one of them will be hugely transformed by AI. And so the question is, if you're in any of those jobs, will you be part of this transformation and leading this transformation or not? If you're leading and part of this transformation, that's hugely exciting. The reality is that it's hugely exciting for any of those. And so I think there's opportunities in any of those jobs, because what is the future of research? Now, there's so many different things that you can do, in terms of research. There's so many, things that needs to be invented, created, transformed. So I think any jobs has a huge opportunity. So it's much more how do you position yourself and what kind of opportunities you can see for yourself rather than the job in itself. Because the reality is that research today and in 5 years, sales today in 5 years, it's not written yet. It's really for us to write the story.
So you touched a bit on kind of skills a minute ago. So if we focus then more on, okay, as a professional, like what skills are going to be important to be part of the transformation and leading the transformation, as opposed to somebody that's going to get automated out of a job? Like, what skills do you think are really important to future-proof yourself?
Yeah, so I think there's so even before skills, I think that there are 3 different areas which are really important to be supercharged. That's domain experience, leveraging technology, and ability to learn quickly. Domain experience is the one that I see, most of the time people really underestimate, and which is if I've been working for 20 years in a bank, I have domain experience. That's just part of why. But on the other hand, people really underestimate what that means. Yeah. Knowing an industry, understanding how it works, having the hard skills to do whatever job you do, understanding the vocabulary, how the stakeholders think, how the the different ecosystem works. That's a huge value. This is what makes you different compared to other people. So, for example, what you do and what I do, I would have no idea of what you do at a very deep level. This is what makes the huge difference. If you combine that with leveraging technology, this makes a supercharged professional. So if I'm very good at my domain, this is how I can do it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times better. And the last one, which is the ability to learn quickly. The reality is that there's so many things that are happening at the moment. So this ability to learn quickly makes the difference between those who can adapt and those who cannot. So I think that's at the high level. Those are the 3 types of areas which are important. That's why when you ask the question of which job or which domain or etc., that really depends on where you're strong at and build from where you're strong at. Going a bit deeper in terms of leveraging technology, there are 2 sets of skills. AI skills, clearly. So being able to be very proficient at using the tools, leveraging them. And the second one is what I call the future-proofing skills. Again, that's really this idea, which is that if I learn prompting today, that's very good. But in 6 months, I don't know if prompting will still be there. There will be something different. Yeah. So what kind of skills do I have that help me to always be part of these changes? That's the future-proofing skills.
Just to keep on that tag, what do you see? Is there anything you can kind of speak to around? So we'll have a lot of individuals watching this today who have a lot of domain experience. Yep. So that's a tick. That's good. Hopefully that's giving some confidence to some of those. With individuals who've got a lot of experience, what do you notice around those that are proficient at kind of showing adaptability, willingness to learn? Is there anything you can speak to that people should be thinking about in order to kind of, just be better at adopting and changing?
No, yeah, definitely. So I'll make a generalization, and that's really about how do you move from task robot to problem solver?
Yeah.
Because I used to be in banking, and in banks, the reality is that we have a lot of task robots. No, that makes sense. Where you have to be good at is executing what your boss says and make sure that you fully understand the instructions and do it really well. But that means that you have a lot of task robots. Now, I used to be a very good task robot, for example, in banking. But if you're a good task robot and you spend a lot of time, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, being a very, very good task robot, then you lose this part, which is problem solving, which is system thinking. And you're there waiting for instructions. Right. And in an AI world, what does it mean? It means the difference between who does the thinking. If you're a task robot, that means that it's your boss who does the thinking. In an AI world, that means that it's an AI that's going to do the thinking. Right. If you're a problem solver, you are doing the thinking, and that's for others or the machine to do the execution. So I think that my first advice that if you've been in a large organization for a long time, it's quite possible that you're a very good task robot, but then try to change this mindset into problem solving. How do you do it? A lot of different ways of doing it, but it's really this mindset of not waiting for instructions, but proactiveness, a sense of initiative, questioning things, trying to find solutions, etc. So I think that's one which is really important because that's not just about AI. That's just in general, how jobs are starting to move to these higher levels. The second one is usage of AI. I think most people, or I know most people because we train a lot of people, are at a very basic level of using AI. They might be using ChatGPT, etc. That's really good. The reality is that between ChatGPT and being able to do custom GPT, use agents, really understand why where hallucinations come from, being able to automate your task, being able, there's a gap. It's a humongous gap. So what I would suggest, make sure that you can properly leverage AI and not at the level of just having the free version of ChatGPT and using prompting, because it's a ratio of 1 to 1 million between people who can properly use AI and people who are just at the beginning. So I think those would be my two things compared with the experience of what I see pretty much from around the world. It's not just in London, but pretty much from around the world.
Brilliant. That's great feedback. Are there different skills required if we look at kind of fintech versus traditional banking? Are there any differences there that you can see?
So biggest difference, I think, is really what I call and it boils down to, let's call that mindset. But as I've mentioned, in a fintech startup, you need problem solvers or system thinker or superstar. You cannot be a task robot because, especially for the early stage startups, you don't know what task there is to be. So waiting for execution and orders, that doesn't work because we don't know what they are. So I think that's the biggest difference. On the other hand, so that and I've had the experience of both. That's why some people who did really, really well in banking, sometimes when they join a fintech startup, then actually they really struggle to adapt because they're waiting for clear instructions in a world where there are no clear instructions. On the other hand, there are some people who do really, really well in fintech startups and who do really poorly in banking because they might be superstar or system thinker in a fintech startup. They go into a bank and they want to change everything, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they don't have the political skills. They don't know how to navigate the organization. They don't know how to get others basically to help them to make it happen. Whereas in a fintech startup, you can just do it by yourself. So I think it's different. It's different, but the reality is that some people do really well in both. But the biggest difference is, I would say, the mindset, task robot versus problem solver, and the ability to work with a lot of people and make things happen in a large organization, which is let's call that political skills, which is not negative at all. It's really making sure you know how to navigate the organization.
Awesome. Any last thoughts on what professionals should be doing to kind of stay ahead?
Yes, I'm very convinced about it because I even started a whole platform based on this, which is we're in one of the most exciting times ever. I'll give you an example. So before banking, I used to be an entrepreneur long time ago. And at that time, it was really hard to be an entrepreneur because it's hard in general, but it was really expensive. You had to spend a lot of money to do things. Then it became easier and easier with SaaS. And today, I would say, what you can do with your own hands, like your two hands, is incredible. I can do like 1 billion times more than 20 years ago. Doesn't matter where I am, in a startup, in a bank, etc. So the opportunities are just incredible. So my advice would be, just make sure that you're part of this world because it's really, really exciting. And whoever you are, whatever experience you have, now all of those tools are just easily accessible for everyone. So you can always start from where you are and leverage this technology to do amazing things. So my view is like that we're entering into a totally new world. Now you have everybody has this superpower of being able to do whatever they want. So just make sure that that you leverage it.
So okay, let's start. Selfish question: how can I become supercharged? So that how would you recommend kind of approaching becoming supercharged?
So how to become supercharged? Come to CFTE first. Because that's why we created CFTE. CFTE was really about that, making sure that everybody could benefit from all these new technologies and whatever they do. So now we spent 7-8 years now building CFTE, 1,000 experts, hundreds of courses. So we have a very good experience on that, and a lot of people at CFTE, our alumni, have been supercharged. Much more than that, I just spent now it's 3 months building a course on supercharged, which is extremely structured for anyone to start from AI literacy, being very good at AI, to tool proficiency, knowing how to use the tools really well, to system thinking, which is building your whole system for AI. So I think start from CFTE because it was designed for financial services, so for technology in financial services. Make sure that you have the right foundations. Because there's a lot of content out there from LinkedIn to YouTube, etc. I would say do that in a second stage, but make sure that you have the right foundations, because once you have the right foundations, then you have acquired those what I call future-proofing skills, and you can build on top of on that. Otherwise, you're always just running behind the latest trends, etc. And it's just hard to properly build your knowledge. So I would say we talked about superpower. The superpower of everybody today is learning, and so start from a platform like CFTs. There's some other very good ones, but start with having right foundations and make sure that you can build on top of it.
Awesome. What do you think the main opportunities are today?
So the main opportunities. So I think the answer depends on where you work. If you work in a bank, for example, it's different from whether you're working in a startup or whether you're an entrepreneur. What's the main opportunity in the bank? We work with a lot of banks. And one of the, I would say, frustrations of a lot of senior leadership in banks is that they don't have enough people who would be innovative, who help basically the bank to go into the future. And I think that's understandable. When you're in a bank, you're busy, you have your job to do, etc. But I think whatever you do, if you're not technical, even if or especially if you're non-technical, if you're in compliance or legal or audit or sales, or whatever job you do, there's a lot of opportunities for you to be involved, to raise your hand and say, I want to be a part of it, because the reality is that there are projects everywhere, for how to leverage AI for compliance, etc. The only thing is that it's driven by technology, And what you need is people, from the compliance side to say, this is how it should benefit compliance. So I would say, if you're in a large organization, make sure that you raise your hand and be part of those initiatives, because this is what banks are looking for. They're looking for people in those organizations that can help those banks to transform, those banks to modernize. If you're in a startup, that's different. Because it's not just about raising your hand and being part of it. The reality is that you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. If you want to, for example, transform your customer service activities, because at the moment it takes too much time and you don't have enough resources, in a week, you can actually implement a whole system to transform your customer service interactions. So here it's not just about being part of an initiative, it's yourself implementing the initiative and yourself getting the skills to do it. And this is what we see at the moment. All these new waves of startups in the Silicon Valley, for example, Cursor, $200 million of revenues with 50 people, Gamma, $100 million of revenues with 28 people. This is exactly what they're doing. They're just learning and implementing right away.
Awesome. We've had a question through. What are the best AI tools for sourcing, hiring, and screening candidates for the best fit to the requirements?
So I wouldn't be the best person to answer this. Yeah. So yeah. I wouldn't know. What I can say is there's a very structured framework for that. Because this question about AI tools for sourcing candidates, for example, you could ask the same question for a lot of different types of applications. And that's the challenge that we have in AI today. There's, I think, 40,000 AI applications out there. Every day, there's hundreds of new ones. How do you find the right ones? And so you need a structured thinking about this. And the structured thinking is you need to, it's a bit like you're a product manager and you have your product requirements document, PRDs, and you go step by step in terms of making sense of complexity. That's exactly the same when you want to use an AI tool. You have to go step by step and set your objective, break down your tasks, define your requirements, test, etc. And after that, you can find your perfect tool.
I think I can jump in here as well. I think one thing that people need to be mindful of is the regulation around making hiring decisions, especially within the EU, and there's cases coming up in the US where people feel like they've been discriminated against, or that humans not been involved in the process. I think from our perspective, as a career platform, we have our own model that's explainable, so we can help customers define shortlists using our own AI model, but this isn't a model that we can explain. So I think the danger is just chucking your applications or a shortlist into a large language model that you cannot explain, and it may give you a different answer from one day to the next. So what's really important, if you are testing different platforms, you need to understand the explainability and the level of transparency around how a model has come to the conclusion it has. We can with ours, and we were able to demonstrate how a shortlist has been derived at. But really important that you are not making decisions about individuals' futures that you cannot explain, because that's a way that you could get into some hot water. So I think Huy's advice to be really deliberate around how you make that decision, important one, but I'd say really get to know and understand, see live data when you're testing anything, because demos can look amazing, but make sure you before you make a long-term commitment on anything, make sure you test it with some of your own live data, and the explainability piece and understanding how it's got to the result it's got to is so important, because you don't want to be having any awkward conversations with candidates who say, hey, why didn't I get through, and they want to understand what's happened with their data, and you can't answer that. That could be a problem.
And I think that's an example that you gave is just a really good example of how we can leverage AI, and also how you need let's call that a thoughtful and structured process in doing it, and not just looking at all those nice things that you have on LinkedIn and just implementing it right away.
Yeah, that's it. Not in areas that can get you in trouble anyway, and there's plenty of those in banking. So yeah. So we've had some more questions. So we've had some quite a few questions come in. The first one is, will AI hallucinations end?
So so the good news is that AI hallucinations have dropped very significantly in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, AI hallucinations were at 15%. Now they are at 5%. So AI hallucinations in the sense of the AI providing you with an answer which doesn't make any sense, or it fabricates no facts, data, etc. It has gone down. However, and it depends how we define hallucinations. However, we're starting to see something which is different. Is the ability for AI, for example, to mislead, but mislead just like a person would be misleading, etc. Yeah. So it's not really an hallucination. It's not a cognitive failure of AI. It's more of a behavior issue on AI. So I think hallucinations as obvious mistakes have been going down because AI is much more powerful, let's say. But at the same time, because it's more powerful, we're starting to see some behaviors which we didn't see before, which are starting to be closer to behaviors of people. So something to keep in mind, definitely, when you use AI.
What would you say are the kind of, what recommendations do you have for AI courses that professionals can take to upskill in this industry? Well, you've got a few, I guess. So
yeah. No, definitely. So at CFTE, we have quite a few, from AI in finance to generative AI in finance. Quite a few which are very specialized. So, for example, generative AI for corporate treasury, or for compliance, or for investment management. Which are much more specialized. So I think that makes sense to start with the foundations. I mentioned it before, but for a topic like AI, it's really important to start with the foundations. For example, we talked about hallucinations. I can spend all day long just looking at all types of hallucinations and how they change, etc. But at the foundation level, you need to understand why is the transformer technology different from previous machine learning technologies. Once you understand this, then you understand all the hallucinations and bias and where they come from, etc. So I think it's really important, not for people to become geeks or technologists, but to really understand where it comes from. Once we understand that, so adding more and more, and always linking back to what you do, because understanding what Google does, of course, is interesting, but if I work in a bank, it's much more interesting to understand how a JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or DBS would be using this. So those are, we have a lot. You can look at CFTE. There are some more, let's call that generic courses of AI for business, from Oxford, where I used to be, for example, MIT, etc. So there are some very good ones which are more for business in general that work really well too.
Awesome. Next questions we've had. What is the impact of AI on trader and relationship manager jobs?
So quite different, of course, for traders and relationship manager. Let me start with traders. So traders, we know that the trend for automation is not new at all. I can't even remember when it started, perhaps 20 years ago. We've been talking about it for such a long time. That doesn't end. But I think what is much more interesting on the trading side is what people can do differently. And we've been in an arms race in terms of algo trading and high frequency and doing things faster and faster. So that I think this is good. This is not where AI will bring the most value. Where AI will bring the most value are things that you couldn't do before. I'll give you an example. I'm sure a lot of you would know Jeremy Grantham, the CEO of, or the co-founder of GMO. He's a macro, more of a macro kind of person. He's been predicting the crisis of 2008. At the same time, he was totally wrong in predicting a super cycle in commodities in 2010. So I just wanted to know the predictions of Jeremy Grantham, on average, is he good or not? So that's something I could do. I've done this a lot of times in the past in my previous jobs. I think it would have taken me perhaps 1-2 days, perhaps, of looking back at all his predictions, looking at the data and trying to make sense of the data, short-term, long-term, across commodities, equities, real estate, et cetera, et cetera. By using ChatGPT deep research, I have a result which is very, very good, and it took me 5 minutes. So from pretty much 2 days to 5 minutes at a level of something which is really, really good. What does it mean for trading today? It means that I can test all types of strategies which were impossible to do before, and now in a matter of minutes or even seconds. So my creativity, my imagination now has no limits. So I think that trading starts to become really different, because we were in an arms race of trying to do always faster, faster, faster. Now we're going to start to see people being able to do things totally different. So it's a, let's call that return to creativity and industry knowledge for traders. Relationship management, of course, very different. Relationship management now moves into a different space from a macro standpoint, which is now data is unlimited. We have data everywhere. On the other hand, what is very, very scarce is, let's call that relevant, actionable information, insights. And what is even more scarce is trust. So now, on the internet, who can I trust? What can I trust? Knowing that now more than half of the internet is AI created. Who can I trust? At some point for my money, I really want to trust someone. So I think relationship management becomes much, much more important. But of course, it's not old school relationship management anymore. When your client can access all types of data at the tip of their fingers, it's about how can you provide the same kind of service and data and insights, but with your human part. So I would say the role of relationship manager becomes much more important, because trust becomes much more important, but it's augmented with technology.
Great. What skills would you like to see in graduate applicants entering an AI world?
So what skills? That's a really good, very difficult question. So a few different skills. Ideally, 3 types of skills by far. The first one is problem solver. We're really looking for people who are in the mindset of not waiting for instructions, but who are there to solve problems. So problem solver. How can you find this? Because it's hard to know from your transcript or your CV if you're a problem solver. There's really all the initiatives that you have had, the societies, what kind of involvement you had, what you did. So problem solving. How can I know that a graduate is a good problem solver or not? The second one is the ability to use digital tools very, very quickly and adapt and learn very, very quickly. So how are you comfortable with one day using ChatGPT and the other day Perplexity and Tableau and etc. So digital tools. And the third one, which is the hardest by far, is experience. Because what I would want is people who have some kind of experience. But as a graduate, where do you get this experience from? And that's really this chicken and egg kind of problem. So if you had an internship before that shows experience, but even if you didn't, there's millions of ways today for you to show experience. For example, if you wanted to apply at CFTE, there's so many things that you can do now that you have all those tools at your disposal. Can you come up with an interesting idea of what CFTE could do some research, do some thinking, etc. That shows problem solving for you, the ability to use digital tools and come up with some kind of solution of, I've made some analysis of CFTE, or for example, if you wanted to go into asset management, then for example, there would be the ability to make an analysis of what kind of strategy could, BlackRock use in the digital world. It's useful for you, it helps you to think, and it shows that you have the sense of initiative and have built some kind of experience just on your own. So I think the three, would be important. Problem-solving kind of mindset, ability to learn and use digital tools, and the third one, which is experience, which even if you don't have experience, you can build your own experience today.
It's a great point, actually. I hadn't really thought about that there is that beauty of low-cost access to tools that can show that you've developed something. Really that kind of level of experience does become more accessible, and it's a bit of a leveler. Really interesting. Last question, so opposite end of the scale. We've had, how can professionals over 40 stay competitive in an AI-driven job market?
Yes, that's a really good question. And this question, I understand where it comes from because it's not obvious. 2 years ago, the IMF had this report talking about the hundreds of millions of jobs that would be disrupted. And their conclusion was that young people would do really well because they're very familiar with technology, whereas older people will struggle to adapt because they're less comfortable with technology. What we've seen actually is, if anything, almost the opposite, which is that younger people are very confident with technology, but they do not have the domain experience. So if, for example, they ask ChatGPT, what is this investment strategy? Does it make sense, etc.? Once they have the answer from ChatGPT, they don't know what good looks like. So they don't know if it makes sense or not. Whereas on the other hand, older people, more experienced people have the domain experience. So they understand the answer. They know how to structure their thinking. They know how to delegate also. So they know how to properly communicate their instructions to AI. In all cases, I think that for older people, they have this domain experience, which the younger generation wouldn't have. That's a big, big, big asset. So I would say if you have more experience, that's a huge asset that you have. And so just make sure that you complement it with leveraging technology. And I think a very big misconception is that AI can only be used by technologists. That's not at all. We have trained hundreds of thousands of people. Every single person can leverage AI today. Perhaps 10 years ago, you needed a PhD from MIT. Today, any person can be very, very proficient with technology. So I say, if you're older, then leverage on what is your strength, which is really knowing your stuff. And once you do that, leverage it with technology, then you can bring huge, huge value to your organization or to yourself.
It's a bit of a follow-up. This is a kind of a discussion I've had with a number of people. What happens to the talent pool? Because I hear what you're saying. So, if you think about the typical kind of analyst level, doing all the grunt work, the modeling, that's then kind of getting farmed up, checked by, associate VP. What happens in 10, 15 years time where there are maybe far less individuals actually needing to do the base level work? What happens to that talent pool as you go up to the organization? Who's going to be checking whether the models are right and the outputs that what have you got a view on kind of, will our organizations start to become almost like inverted pyramids, or like what's going to happen to talent?
No, I think you identified a very important problem which is happening at the moment. And it all boils down to the fact that we learn by doing. What's the benefit for me as a young analyst to do an Excel model like 200 times? It's not doing the Excel model and the result of it. It's because I learned by doing it. And now the challenge is that if I'm experienced, then do I need a young person to do it 200 times and very slowly, or can I just do it much faster with no AI? And the answer in a lot of cases, if you're just a very, very short-termist, in that case, you would just use no AI. So that's a very big challenge. And what it means is that it means that we need to rethink how we do training in the banks, typically, but also how we educate people at university level. Because at university level today, we just prepare people so that they are smart enough to be trained on the job when they join a company. But if you're not trained on the job, then this gap becomes bigger and bigger. So we need to rethink that. As a side note, for it, you talked about children at the beginning of the interview. And I've been thinking a lot about it because, we're a platform and we teach about AI. We love AI, we love technology. But now I have a very different view for children. And my view is that children shouldn't use AI. Full stop. They shouldn't use AI. Why? Because when you're learning, this is when you develop your thinking abilities. To develop your thinking abilities, you need effort. If there's no effort, you're not learning. And all the studies, all the first research shows that the more you use AI, the less you learn. And so if you're young, I think this is where you have to develop your learning abilities, your thinking abilities. And until the day when we find a very good way for schools to be really good at leveraging AI, today the solution, which is just getting ChatGPT in the hands of children, I think it's not the right way. So we would be quite extreme there and say, for children, they just shouldn't use AI and be very, very old school until they have developed their thinking abilities, then they can accelerate.
Yeah, you're battling with get them off YouTube, get them off, Instagram, Snapchat. This is just another thing, isn't it? That was really fascinating, and I've really enjoyed the discussion, Huy. We're kind of coming up to the top of time. Thank you so much for all that insight. If we didn't, as I said at the top, if we didn't get to your question, apologies. We will answer all of the questions as soon as we can. Thank you all for really watching. I think what we've heard really is don't necessarily worry about your specific jobs. Think about your domain expertise, having that adaptability and willingness to learn, as well as being prepared to test, try, adopt AI and be part of the change rather than let the change happen around you, is going to be really key, both for leaders, employees, those kind of planning, HR functions, kind of looking at how they can kind of transform their workforce. But really fascinating discussion, and topped off with banning my kids from AI, which they're probably not that interested in. Again, it's just the battle keeping them off YouTube. But how we think about how do we bring in the talent through for generations to come, which is I think a really important challenge that hopefully lots of people on here would have gained some good insight from that. So thanks, Huy, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Thanks a lot, everybody, for watching this webinar. It was a really fascinating discussion. Thanks a lot for this, also very enjoyable discussion. And I hope that the message got through, as you said, which is at the end of the day, it's a world which is open to everyone. I think that's really my conclusion. And just make sure that you're part of this transformation, because it is really, really exciting. So thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks a lot, Pete and eFinancialCareers.
Welcome. And should anybody wish to, we'll be following up with some communication, but should anyone wish to reach out to Huy or myself, then please, we'll our details will be in the follow-up. You can look up Huy on LinkedIn, I guess. I'm there also. So please do feel free to reach out directly to either of us as well. Thanks for your time. Cheers, everybody.